We ready? Okay. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Public Committee meeting for the Town of Abita for September 1st, 2020. It is now 6:03. Let us start with a Pledge of Allegiance, please, by, Pat is not here, so Mr. Saucy.
All stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Yes. All right. Do we know if Pat is Pat showing up this evening? Have we? Okay. All right. Well, let's just. We've got infrastructure. Why don't we'll move infrastructure committee to last, if that's okay?
You need to vote to do that?
Well, we're starting now. Oh, before, yeah.
Before he has to open it, he may show up, yeah.
All right, well, we'll hold off. All right, well, let's go ahead and get started with Finance Committee.
Ryan, you need to speak into your mic.
No
that
mayor's
better?
announcements tonight?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yep. Mr. Mayor, you have some announcements that you'd like to share? Any announcements?
Oh. No.
No?
I didn't hear you either. I'm sorry. No, I don't have any announcements at this
Okay.
time.
All right, well then, we will go right into the Finance Committee.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion to open the Finance Committee.
I'll second that.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes from August.
I'll second that as well.
And the only thing on our agenda tonight is a presentation by Jay Hawkins for the July financial report.
Good evening. I'm going to start making some general comments, and then I'm going to get into a couple of specific items that we need to let everyone know about. First off, some overall comments about where we stand as of July 2020. It looks like our sales tax revenue has actually increased year to date 4.6% in general fund and in public works. Unfortunately, sales tax, we had a 7% reduction from 2019 in shared sales tax.
I wanted to write down the tabs on the top. Y'all all found where those tabs
Got it.
are?
Yep.
Thank you.
But on the whole, sales tax has been performing quite well despite the pandemic and the other situations. The ad valorem tax is up 10.3% over 2019. In expenses have only increased 3.6%. So all in all, we're doing quite well in the general fund. Utility fund, gas revenue, gas sales is down 10% from 2019. Gas expenses are down 16%. So that gives us a little bit better revenue surplus in terms of our natural gas sales.
Jay, have they ever done a comparison percentage? You say we're down 10% over 2019.
Right.
Have they ever done a comparison of temperature versus percentage? Obviously, if it isn't cold, we're not burning a lot of gas for heat. So has there ever been done a comparison of warmer months versus colder months?
Just colder months? No, I haven't got that detailed, but generally when those revenues are down from year to year,
You had an extremely mild winter in 2019.
it's because of a mild winter.
Exactly.
Now, part of this has to do with natural gas, the price of natural gas, which is down. It normally, the cost of natural gas is normally 42 to 44%. So far this year, it's only 33%.
And we are transferring that, passing that on to the customer, correct?
Well, natural gas rates have not changed to our consumers, no. There's no rate change to the consumers, right?
Okay.
No, so that goes into the enterprise fund, which is a for-profit fund, and will be used actually to help offset expenses to improving the water and sewer system. So,
And updating the water meters.
and upgrading the water
Okay.
meters and so on. Water revenue is up only 2.3%. Sewer revenue is only up 3.5%. So those are staying relatively stable comparison to 2019. As I said, Public Works revenue from sales tax is up 4.6%. Expenses are up, though, 405%. And that's because there's been some expenses in terms of equipment repairs and supplies that have been higher than normal. Some of that will change in the future because we're changing the formula for which those expenses are either put in Public Works or they're put into the utility fund, because the same trucks do all the work. So it's,
Jay, where's that number at? I'm sorry to interrupt.
what's that?
Where do you show that? You said how much percent increase?
4.6%. 4.6% increase in Public Works revenue.
No, you
I'm
said
talking about the
expenses
expense.
were 400%.
In the sales tax.
Where is that?
And that's basically the revenue for Public Works is the sales tax.
But you said something about the expense
Oh, the
side.
expenses are up 405% over 2019.
Do you have that noted somewhere? Or is that just on one of your sheets? Or
Uh,
is that, I wasn't sure if you had that
Oh,
noted.
it's not on that sheet. It's on the comparison that that I sent you, which was what Stacy sent out. It's a year-to-year comparison.
18, 19, 20. You got it, Brian?
I guess I didn't print that one out. I printed out the other one. Okay, I'll look at it. All right,
Yeah,
thank you.
there was $32,000 in equipment repairs, $28,000 for Public Works supplies. We had $15,000 in hazardous tree removal. Those were all lower in 2019 than they were in 2020. So it's just happens year to year. Sometimes you're going to get hit and sometimes you're not. But fortunately, we've got the revenue to take care of it.
And plus, the addition of Mayor Curtis has implemented a maintenance schedule versus prior administration, there was no maintenance.
Right. Right, that's something that they've instituted is a maintenance
Correct.
schedule on all the equipment. So it should even out over time.
Well, it will even out over time, and unfortunately, Mayor Curtis came into that, and now having to repair equipment that was neglected
Right.
for years and not having a proper maintenance schedule. That's costly initially, but as you mentioned, it will even out over time and lessen. So, thank you.
Shared sales tax, the revenue was, revenue was down 7%. Expenses are down 36.5%. So we still have a surplus, but a lot of that money is going to go toward road and drainage repairs. But we're going to hold off on doing roads, streets and roads until after the sewer lines are all fixed. We don't want to be tearing up roads after, in order to do sewer lines. So once that's all done, then we'll get to repairing the roads and.
As long as it's not all roads. Mr. Grenier can attest to that. The roads outside of the sewer project
Right.
still need to be attended to.
Well, I don't know about that.
They need to be attended to.
Okay.
We have resident taxpayers that need to be addressed.
So that's about the extent of my general comments. The other funds, Park and Rec has a bit of a negative amount right now because there's been more expenditures than revenue coming in. The lighting fund is going to hold its own this year. We won't have to supplement it because of the change we made with adding CLECO franchise tax into that in order to take care of the expenditures there. And the cemetery fund is holding its own. Apparently, we've sold a number of plots this year, which has helped.
Can you back up a little bit and point us to where you're talking about the Park and Rec fund being,
That would be under.
is this on this last combined sheet? I'm just trying to see if I'm looking at the right sheet.
It would be under. No, go back to the cash flow. Oh, that's the cash account. We're going to get to that next. Okay, that's lighting, keep going up.
Is
That's all I got.
it
Oh.
on the cash flow sheet?
That's all it's written on here,
Oh.
this one.
Oh.
And then the following.
Okay.
That was the second set of documents.
Looks like I just have the lighting, but I
Yeah.
don't have all the other ones.
She doesn't have the rest of them. She's got lighting, but not the rest of them. I'll get with you after, and I'll
Okay.
show you where that is.
But do you know how much of a deficit we're at right now?
About
For-
$10,000 for the year. And of course, that can change depending on revenue and expenses, but that's what I'm estimating right now.
Right.
On the, you should have a account balance spreadsheet, which shows you what the account balances are for each of the accounts, each of the funds that we have. And we made a change. I sent out a correction because of the reclassification of two funds, or two accounts, 210040 and 210050. Those are reserve and contingency accounts for the LDEQ loan. They previously had been unrestricted, but they are restricted. Those funds have to go toward that loan. Now, that's one part of it. The other part is that any surplus in those accounts can be used by the town for any lawful purpose. So in actuality, if you look on page 2 at the unrestricted dollar amount of $566,821, you can add, if in an emergency, we could use $435,000 out of those reserve and contingency and sinking funds if we need to. So we do have, for emergency purposes only, $1 million that we could draw on in an emergency. But saying that, it's not like we're rolling in cash. All that money is going to be used. We've got 8, by my account, 8 major projects going on with the sewer line repair, the lift station rehab, sewer plant rehab, looking at a water line engineering study and water line replacement, and a backup water well, the renovation of the annex, the renovation of the town hall, and then finally, road repairs. So there are a number of major projects that we need to have money for over time, and we've got some of it, but in contracting lingo, there's a term called differing site conditions. And that means that in certain cases, you may find things aren't exactly the way you think they are, and you've got something that affects the cost of a project, that may add to the cost of the project. So you need to have extra cash around to handle those situations. Any questions about cash accounts? Okay, the third thing I want to touch on is I worked on, for the utility fund, a spreadsheet, and I'll have it more polished for next month, but what I've done is I've taken out all the bond issue payments, all the loan payments, all the loan expenses, all of that stuff, just to get a pure operational situation. And it appears as though we have enough money to handle operations. What we don't have is money to replace meters when it's needed, and money to replace water lines when they're needed. So those are two issues that we need to look at. I understand LMA is going to be doing a water rate study. LWRA is going to be doing a water rate study. And LMGA is going to look at gas. The fourth item is the budget. We're going to start on the 2021 budget this month. There will be a pre-budget meeting on the 9th, and then there will be open meetings scheduled.
We'll have the first meeting will be a committee meeting with the finance committee. It will be an open meeting. We don't have a date yet, but the first meeting is going to be an open meeting with the finance committee. And then after that, we will present the budget and have discussion at open meetings, probably in October.
Okay. So that's about it. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Jay, just going back to the point about the sewer project.
Right.
I think we talked briefly about trying to separate those out.
Right.
So we'll have revenue that we get from, say, a draw. We'll separate that as draw, and then expenses related to that project will be separated from day-to-day operating expenses.
Right. All of that will be removed, and what will be in its place is estimated maintenance expenditures. You know, given that you have new sewer lines and a new sewer plant and all of that, what you might set aside or have available for normal maintenance of your sewer plant and of your sewer lines. So replacing the expenditures for fixing those things will be a maintenance figure for just normal maintenance.
Right, okay. All right, and that's something you'll kind of just...
Yeah, that'll be on a,
it'll be on a... Or you just gonna tweak this and have a separate line item?
Right. It'll look like that, only it will be devoid of those other
Okay,
items.
okay. All right, perfect. Thank you.
Jay, just a second. We just signed the contract with the lift station repair last week, Wednesday or Thursday of last week, one of those days. They will be starting in October, and they should be finished sometime into January maybe early February, depending upon rain. The gravity feed system will also be winding up probably about the same. They have, they just contacted and they're going to start back, after COVID and all that. Yeah, right after Labor Day. And then that should be finishing up about the same time. Then from there, we'll jump on the sewer plant and what we're going to do with that. And, so hopefully, this time next year or something like that, we'll have all, they'll all be completed and finished and up and running, and we should be in much better shape.
All right, sounds good.
When do we anticipate setting a date for that first finance committee?
Oh, the fun.
Stacy sent you an email requesting dates that you guys are available. We're hoping to do it, I think,
Okay.
second or third week of September.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
okay.
So that's what we'd like to do. We're going to have a meeting first, sit down and put together some numbers for you. Then that will sit down with you guys at an open finance committee meeting, a special meeting that's open to the public, and discuss the numbers. And then from there, we can start presenting it at open meetings.
Okay.
Yeah, actually, the cash flow sheet that you get each month is the start of of the budget. It's
Okay.
the start of next year's budget, and what we do is go in and massage those numbers and update them to fit 2021. So it makes it a lot easier going forward and a lot quicker.
Okay.
Yeah, we'd really like to try and set a record and maybe have the budget passed by end of November. That would really be cool.
Well, Mayor, if that's the case, be extremely conservative.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions?
At this time. Thank you, Jay. Nobody has any other questions? I'd like to make a motion to close the finance committee.
I'll second that.
That being said, I'd like to make a motion to open governmental committee.
I will second that.
I'd like to make a motion for the acceptance of the minutes of August.
All right, and I'll second that as well.
There are 3 items on the agenda tonight under governmental. The first one is consideration and recommendation of instrument 2020-007, an ordinance to amend the Abita Springs Design Review Guidelines, for the Historic Commission relative to porches and fences.
I'd like to ask that this be opened up to the committee as a whole.
Granted?
Guess we'll need to vote.
Go ahead, make
All right, I'll make that motion.
Second.
All right, so I guess.
Alderman Randolph, comment?
Honestly, the only comment is about the porches. I think that just needs to be left at the 7-foot that it is now. Let the homeowner decide if they want an 8-foot, let the homeowner decide if they want an 8-foot fence. I mean, porch, I've driven around town, and from the untrained eye, obviously I'm not an architect, I can't tell the difference between a 6-foot fence, a 6-foot porch, or a 7-foot porch, or an 8-foot porch. So all the reports that I've gone back and kind of did a little bit of research, 6-foot porch was a standard for older homes when they were originally built. So I don't think it's necessary to put another regulation on building here in Abita. My niece is about to build a home on property given to her by my brother, and when people ask where she is building, she says Abita, and everyone goes, oh, good luck. So I love that we are trying to protect the feel of our town. I grew up here, so I appreciate that, but I just don't think this is a necessary change. I understand the lumber is 8-foot, but let the homeowner be the person that makes that decision. I mean, that adds roof on, so that means they have to have more construction costs on adding additional roof. So I just don't see the point in changing that. The fence thing, I'm okay with the fence thing.
Alderwoman Contos, comment?
I understand, Miss Yvette, your comment, but, I happen to be of, landscape architecture background, and I do think that an 8-foot porch is a more usable outdoor space. And I also, having gone through lead design for energy efficiency, et cetera, like the idea that there will be less lumber in a landfill due to the fact that the excess from an 8-foot board is going to be chopped off and thrown in a dumpster because you cannot buy a 7-foot board. So from a practicality standpoint, I think it's a win-win because you're going to have more usable spaces that meet today's standards. I mean, if you look at a kitchen from 1962, it would be a lot smaller than what somebody would build today. So, porches, just like anything else, change. I respect your opinion, but I have a difference of opinion that I'm kind of okay with the suggested change.
Mayor Pro Tem Murphy, any comments?
Well, I will separate, since we're on porches right now, from the fences.
And I would make that, I think we should separate the two.
Yeah. Look, for me, and what I do for a living, I get that it's a marginal, and I'm looking at it as a cost perspective. It's a marginal expense, like you mentioned, Yvette, that, yes, I don't know what you'd say, your rafters, or the fact that you're going to bring this out an extra foot, your whole roof line over by 1 foot. Am I able to sit here tonight and tell you that's going to cost you an extra so many dollars and cents? I can't do that. But, I do agree, and we've mentioned this in the past, that, you're buying an 8-foot board, so at least you're using the entire board. So it really boils down to, again, sticking with cost, nothing architecturally or other things like that, just from a cost perspective. Because I do want to be mindful of that too, and I would probably put that at the top of the list, being mindful of the expense. I don't know, Ron, you might know, but I would think that it's a marginal expense, and it just seems like if I was going to build a porch or build a house, I would think that, yes, I'm buying an 8-foot board, I might as well use an 8-foot board. And I think it does kind of make a difference aesthetically. One extra foot, maybe more usable square footage out there. And this is really just for front porches, right? It's just, we're not talking about side or rear porches, which are probably, I would imagine. Okay.
But most of that, but with all due respect, most of my parents' house had a 9-foot front porch from 1892. A lot of the older houses had deeper porches.
So there were sleeping porches. There were sleeping porches here too.
Right.
The major cost of construction, there is a little more lumber on the roof. You throw away lumber on the porch. The major cost of construction is the labor, not the wood. And the labor is exactly the same for that 7-foot porch or 8-foot. It's the same number of nails, same number of cuts, and everything else. So,
And it's actually less expensive, Jay, if you buy a 12-foot board and cut it in half for a 6-foot porch.
well, I'll buy a 16-foot cut in half for an 8-foot.
For an 8, exactly.
But it's hard to find a 14-foot porch, 14-foot porch.
That doesn't exist.
And everything else come into it. So I think the labor is a bigger part, and I see it, you're absolutely right. It's really not a visual thing. You're not going to really see the difference between 7 and 8, but as Regan said, you'll be able to use an 8-foot porch.
Well, that
or
should be the
deeper.
owner's choice.
Right. So let me ask you this, and I don't know if anybody knows the answer to this question, or, whether it be planning and zoning or you, Ron. But if most people building a house today, their front porches, are they actually building to 7 feet, or are they actually doing 8 feet because of the lumber size?
90% of the plans that come before historic are done by drafting services in Mandeville. There are no designers involved, no architects involved. They're doing whatever they can to stay within the minimums as opposed to the best thing for the homeowner. And the other thing that's thrown in this conversation is we can't find out where the 7-foot ever came from. There's not a lot of great archival research. But my thought it was related to the fact that we had a standard 60 by 120-foot lot. We don't have a 60 by 120-foot lot. Now our minimum lot is 90 by 120. So you're talking about a 40-foot wide house. You're talking about 40 square feet added to a house on a concerns about, well, now I'm gonna have to make my living room smaller. Not with an 90 by 120, unless you're building a very large house.
Right.
Well, from architectural standpoint as well as a financial standpoint, depending on the pitch of the roof is going to be can change the cost of the addition of the porch with the extension. And as to Randolph, Contos, and Murphy, the cost can be adjusted. As I mentioned, it's less expensive to buy a 12-foot 2x4 or 2x6 than a 6-foot or 8-foot 2x4, 2x6. So the longer the length, it's less expensive. So they could actually buy a 12-foot, cut it in half and have the 6-foot, and yes, it is less expensive. So that it would actually save cost.
We don't allow 6 feet.
I'm just saying. So they could do it. So you cannot buy a 14-foot timber to anyone that I've ever seen unless you have it custom made, and that's not going to be cost prohibitive.
So are you saying you want a 6-foot porch?
I'm saying we shouldn't minimize this to 7 feet. If they wanted a 6-foot porch, as Yvette mentioned, she drives around. To the naked eye, you can't tell the difference between a 6-foot, an 8-foot, or a 10-foot, could you?
But what you can tell is whether or not people are living in their front yards, and we have this walkable community that we're all working on.
Well-
And if it's just a porch that you can set a chair on, but nobody wants to go out there because you can't really, participate on it.
I don't think it's
then
this
I don't
committee's
know.
decision to
Well-
tell an
Right.
individual if they want a 6-foot or that
And
they
maybe
have
I
to
would
have a
rather
6-foot,
have-
8-foot porch.
Yeah, and maybe I'd rather have a foot more of yard
Exactly.
than a porch. I'd
So-
rather be in my yard and have another foot of vegetable garden
So
or
all-
flower
all-
garden or something. I'm sorry.
Alderman Collins, are you saying that we should tell the people that they need to have a minimum of an 8-foot porch?
Well, it has been recommended by the historic.
I wasn't asking about historical. Are you recommending that we should tell people that they should have an 8-foot porch because it may be more
I'm in
livable?
agreement with the recommendation, if that's what you're asking, yes, because
Okay.
I think that it makes a practical, usable space, which is of importance to me as a person who designs outdoor spaces and cares about the walkable community and the fact that people have usable spaces, not just a superficial kind of stucco front, but a usable space. And I think a 6-foot porch is not a usable space, but an 8-foot porch becomes almost an outdoor room, and that is a usable space. So yes, I'm very much in agreement with that.
My personal preference, I'd rather a 12-foot porch. I mean, the bigger the,
Right.
that's what I'd
but,
prefer.
Mine's 10 feet, but I'm not telling people they have to have a 10-foot. I'm just saying the other part of that is it is practical that if people are going to buy 8-foot lumber, they're cutting off and throwing away things in a landfill. And I don't want to get people all riled up about that situation, but people don't want to pay for another landfill. They don't want to locate another landfill. So why are we instituting things that could result in more trash and debris?
Right.
So, to me, it's practical, it's usable, and it's green and conscientious, which I think this town is trying to be.
I think the landfill discussion's being held tonight on Coop
That's a
Drive.
whole different thing, I'm not trying to get into that. I'm just saying that it can be wasteful.
Sure.
And so that's part of the reason that I'm in support, because I think it's more efficient.
Now, can we go ahead and close the,
Well, these are all together, so its porches and fences are tied to this particular instrument.
can we
So you just.
Can we
switch-
move on to fences and we're finished with porches? Alderman?
I'm
Fine
fine
with
with
me.
that.
Okay. Fences, Alderman Randolph? Any comment?
Nope.
Alderman Contos? Alderman Murphy?
Yes. So after our council meeting last week, 2 weeks ago, I spent a few minutes with Ron, kind of just reviewing the layout that we came up with in the initial committee meeting. With the typical block, you got your corners, you got your key lots and so forth. And I did spend some time in the past few days of just driving around, and I went on Google Map, Earth, and did a street view, and I printed out a number of them. And I had a nice conversation with Ron today, just kind of giving him my thoughts, and really thoughts and concerns, because I printed out, and I'm happy to pass these around, let you guys kind of look at them. But they're just existing houses from neighbors like Troy, who, he's on a corner lot, he's got a 6-foot fence, and it, goes down, it goes down North Street, and then it runs south on the backside of his property. And there are a number of them, which they all have, varying sizes, and some follow current, which we've got 4-foot picket fence, but then it turns into a graduating board fence up to 6 feet at the, I guess it's the, what is it, Ron, the 1/3?
1/3.
1/3 back from the front of the house. So, right, so then it jumps up, and then it wraps around the back side of the house. And if you look at some of these, if you can imagine the camera that's on top of the little Google car that goes around, you've seen these. So it's got the camera on top. So it made me kind of think that, if we require a 4-foot maximum height, I mean, looking at some of these pictures, it's really going to be no different than somebody walking by and seeing somebody's backyard. And I feel like, when I look at these layouts of these houses, people, in my opinion, they appear to want some sort of, they want some privacy. Yep. And I think they should be entitled to that privacy. Right. Yeah, and there's probably 20 examples in there, from across the street from my house to different parts of Abita, New Abita, go on the further side. And like I told Ron, I am not going to sit here and say that I want to do away with this, no way in any shape or form. But I said that I'd like to have more discussion about this, get some more examples, because I think this is kind of a broad stroke of telling everybody that's on a corner that you can't have more than 4 feet of
front third.
No, no, if you're on a corner, unless I misunderstood all this time, but if you're on a corner, the entire length of your corner, that side has to be 4 feet. Now, if you want to have a privacy, if you want to go up to 6 feet, then I think there was some discussion as at what point do you start going up? You create maybe a second fence, so somebody could have...
Excuse 1 second. Ron, correct me on this. I thought when I looked at your map the last time you drew it, that even on the corner house, so if there were 3 houses on a block, you got one on each corner, one in the middle, the houses on the corners, that the 4 foot is set back 1/3. Is that not correct?
That's what it is now.
Right now, it's if you're on a corner lot and you have 2 street fronts.
Correct.
Shorter street front, which would be the front of your house, maybe a 60 or 90 foot width.
Correct.
Some other variation. That's required to have a 4-foot fence or no fence. Then you go back 1/3 the depth of the house with that same 4-foot fence, and then you can go up to the higher fence, correct, at the current time. So then you end up with a long fence on a long street front, especially with some of these 150-foot key lots and things. You end up with a very long wall of fences on the street, and that's the intent of what we're trying to fix. We don't want more south wind walls in Avita. We don't want to be Harrison, Dogtown Road, where nothing but the backs of fences that people are looking at. And I think what Ryan and I discussed about it, we don't have an ordinance that you have to take care of your fence. So the fences are all falling down and they're being rebuilt and staked up, and it just looks terrible. And it's not a walkable, friendly, green community. We're adding new sidewalks in town. The sidewalks have changed this town forever. Just the 2 on Main and Level. And the new sidewalks are going to do even more, and eventually more and more and more. All you do is see people walking on our sidewalks. You don't want to walk by walls or fences. So what we're hoping is this maybe we have to continue to study this, as Brian suggested, is maybe it's not 30 feet deep, maybe it's 10 feet deep or whatever. But you just don't want to have these long, and we've got situations where we've got 2 big corner lots and a 4 little 60-foot key lot in the middle, and this poor homeowner's got big, huge fences on both sides. They can't even see.
They came back out the driveway.
Because of that situation. Now, maybe we can have some situations where when this happens, this is the code. When this happens, this is the code. Because right now it's only one way, and it doesn't reflect all the little odd things in the view. And people are getting bigger and bigger and bigger lots.
Well, yeah.
The person in the middle is suffering, especially when they have a 6-foot fence all the way out, and they can't see out their front.
An 8-foot fence, you can do an 8-foot. The other thing Ryan and I talked about is not part of this ordinance, and maybe it's future discussion, or maybe if this gets postponed for more study. I don't know why we have an 8-foot fence. I think a 6-foot, we have our requirement is a 7-foot high fence or less. But you can have an 8-foot fence if it's 6 foot solid and 2 feet of trellis.
Correct.
The 2 feet of trellis looks terrible.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, look at the house across from St. James. That fence always looks bad. I have nothing against the homeowners or that they don't try to keep it up. It just never looks good. And that's, I don't know where that came from. So we were talking about maybe all fences should just be 6 feet. You know?
Well,
Well,
and
I
again,
definitely
like,
would like to, I would definitely like to get rid of the trestle part at the top, because it does look that.
well, I mean, like I mentioned today, I don't have a problem in certain scenarios having 8 feet, but doing the top 2 feet as some sort of decorative to make it look like you've got, I don't, it's not trellis, but it's, yeah.
We
Or,
just had somebody put up an 8-foot metal, corrugated metal fence, and we ended up, they did it without, we have more problems with the store right now, people are doing things without approval. And we ended up leaving it like it was, because it would look worse to put lattice on top of it.
Yeah.
Maybe they're historic, they just did it.
and I will say this, that, and I mentioned this to Ron today, that when you see the newer sections of Abita on the southern part of town, we don't have the key lots, we don't have the blocks there. I mean, so it's a very different layout, and it's almost like you're talking about apples and oranges. And so what we do here, or what we're trying to achieve here, or what we're trying to achieve over there, is probably going to have a different impact on either one. And so, and look, and I understand when Ron mentioned last time about we're trying to avoid having this long fence like we see, you know, at Southwind as one example, and then there's another one up at Dog Pound Road. It looks good today, but what's it going to look like 10 years from now? But we don't have that really, that's not an issue right now, because if you look at these examples, all these fences, they're all different. None of them really tie into each other.
Right.
Pass this, Saucy. And so you don't have a long stretch like you have with the school out here. They're all different. They're all different types. Some are picket at 4. You know, the picket, the 4 foot's generally a picket. But you go to different heights and different locations so that you don't see one consistent run of a fence.
Right.
So I think it's, and that's why I told Ron today, I was like, I think trying to paint a broad brush is going to have a negative impact on more than one person. It's going to.
I agree.
I'm looking at Home Depot's site right now. Typical fence board are 6 feet. So you're jumping up to 8 feet. You're cutting something off for 7 feet, etc. So
You said 60 inches or 6 feet?
6 feet. And right now we allow 7 feet or 8 feet with 6 inches. Again, someone's throwing wood away. But you do have new sections of Abita, and we have a situation with someone that's in Mayor's Court right now, where there's 4 houses jammed in between high fences, where you got 2 huge lots that are half a block, and their side yards are on the same side street. It's it's a whole block of fence almost. And I think that's what we're trying to say. In certain situations, and maybe there's a different way of writing, that when you have this, you can do this, when you have this, you can do this. It's hard to come up with one requirement that meets everyone, unless you give the historic commission latitude or zoning latitude to say, okay, we're going to work with you, but then people don't like that. They want to know exactly what the rules are before they show up.
Ron, I think you're right, though. I think we're going to have this more latitude.
Yeah, 'cause
And
I can agree
historic
with
and
Ryan.
zoning work with, and Ryan's,
And talking to Ryan, we'd rather get the council's feedback on, do we want blocks of walls and fences, or come up with something that's palatable to homeowners and to the council, so it's a more walkable town. Imagine we get sidewalks everywhere and everybody builds fences. Because these side lots, and most of the lots in Abita, the 120-foot length is on a street, and then on both sides of that square and that block, and those could all be fences except for the last 30 feet.
you go through a lot of subdivisions, and there are no fences allowed on the front third of the house, including the front yard. So I think at this point, we need to move this forward for more discussion.
Or you just table it, and then we'll have discussion.
Yeah.
Or we could table it, but Ron, I think we really need to separate out the porches and the fences from this.
Just defer, well, I'm sorry, we defer it,
Yeah.
yeah.
Defer it.
And the other thing we want to suggest
Right.
one on Main Street and everything else, and you're looking at the back porch, the pretty side of the fence is in the yard, the ugly side of the fence is on the street. And we also think that the fence ordinance should say, the nice side of the fence needs to look out. You can do a two-sided fence, you can put boards on both sides.
Correct.
You can stagger them, you use the same number of boards.
Right.
But we don't want to be looking at the backs of fences. We got a picket fence on 59 that was put up without a permit, and it's backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was talking.
This doesn't look part of it to me. Very easy.
I wonder if we should also consider if there is a major sidewalk plan, and anywhere where we're proposing sidewalks or in the future proposing sidewalks, we look to that 4-foot, reasonable fence. Because there's some areas that we're probably never going to have a sidewalk on in town. And if it's just a question of you're driving by a side street and your neighbor has a 6-foot fence, that really doesn't affect somebody's, walkable neighborhood situation. So maybe we can tie the area that requires the 4-foot fence to what we think will be, our walkable master plan.
But it is so nice to drive through New Avita and see all of these.
Yeah.
When you drive through New Avita, Brian and I were talking, like Brian and I were talking, you look at the houses, it's really not attractive, or the houses until the 70s. Some of these are not old houses.
Yeah,
And the old-looking houses are brand new.
yeah,
And you drive through, isn't this great? They got picket fences and nice landscaping,
Yep.
and they're raised. And this historic commission has come a long, long way since it was founded, long before I was part of Avita. The first house, I was telling Ryan, the first house in the historic district approved in the town of Avita was Jessica Lipscott's house across from Sherry Campbell on Level Street in Young.
oh,
Yellow brick, slab house, really unattractive columns, and the only thing they did was a little Avita Boston gable. That's where they started. And
Right.
the post office, which is now St. James Hall, was also a big fight with the post office about doing that, to even get a roof on it. The post office didn't want to put a tin roof on it. That was our second post office after Mohammedee's.
yeah,
Well, we've come a long way. The school board fought us on an addition to the middle school, and we won. In fact, Jules Lagarde ended up losing his job because of it. He said, we don't have to follow your rules. We said, oh, yeah, you do, and they did. And then the new post office came in. Post office in Memphis says, what do we have to do? It's a national historic district. You tell us what we have to do. We'll
Right.
do whatever you want, and they did. And then, the same thing happened with the new addition to the school, which is going to start construction soon. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful addition. It looks like the original school building, the
Right.
same brick, everything else. It's going to look like an original historic building facing the park with the library overlooking the park. And they came to us and said, and they came to our historic meetings, the head of the school board construction committee came and did 3 times. She was here personally.
yeah,
What do we have to do? So we've
Yep.
come a long way from Jessica's house, and I love Jessica, but from Jessica's house to where we are now, and it's just a natural progression. So this is a little step along the way of making refinements. So I'm perfectly fine with the permit. We'll do a little more study. But we just all, I think, have to agree that Avita, we choose to live in community, we choose to live in a historic district, we choose to agree to follow rules, which are different than Folsom and Chalmette.
Agreed.
And so let's be a different place, because that's why.
Agreed.
Home values are higher, and this is a more special.
So Eddie, how do we defer this and be able to separate out the porches and the fences at the same time?
But I think, first of all, I think that you have a choice to defer, which means you just stay off the agenda until someone moves to put it on the agenda, or you might be able to defer to, say, November, to the November meeting, which then it would be on the agenda for the November meeting, and then when it comes up in November or whatever time, then you can move to separate, to divide them.
Ron, you okay with that?
What you could do is divide them to vote on it, so that you can vote on one part of it and vote on another part of it.
Y'all, Alderman, y'all in agreement with deferring until November? And at that time, we'll separate the two, and Ron, in between now and then, we'll get some more input?
are there,
Yeah,
any-
I'd like to talk to a contractor for Yvette.
yeah,
Is
Yeah.
there a difference in cost?
Yeah.
And no, or 10% or $5, whatever. We ought to have some real facts, because I was in town hall when someone came in and said, oh, no, I can't afford that extra foot. Who told you that? We don't know.
Right.
I'm guessing as an architect, it's the same cost, but we'll see.
What's the range of a pitch of a roof approved in historic?
They have to be a minimum of 8 to
12.
unless it's a historic prototype.
So it's a minimum of 8 to 12, so if that pitch increases, so does the depth of the, so does,
just goes one further out.
Which is usually 4 and 12. It's a lower slope on the Boston gable part that comes up. You got the big roof, then the little porch over
Okay.
part over the porch. So it doesn't affect that. And 8 and 12, it used to be 6, it was 6 and 12. In fact, Andre Mono lives in one of the houses along the Progressive Historic, which wasn't 3 feet up. There were 4 architects on the commission, I wasn't here, when they raised the house minimum to 3 feet, when they changed the pitch to 8 and 12, when they came up with the front porch rules. And so it's been a normal progression through time. But I think what we can do is also sort of look at some of the corner conditions. I mean, we got some of these poor homeowners that can't see out of their front porch because they're surrounded by these high.
correct. No, I think that's unfair.
And then I can do some research on what a standard fence, I talked to a fence company.
Okay.
Is 6 foot your standard fence? What if we save people money by allowing 6 foot fences everywhere?
Okay.
I mean, we can do 6 feet, yeah, but not require 7 or 8.
All right, so I'd like to have a motion to defer to November.
I'll second.
That's been seconded. And let's vote as a committee as a whole. Leanne,
No, just all in favor.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Passes. Number 2, consideration recommendation of instrument 2020-008, an ordinance to amend the Abita Springs Code of Ordinance, Section 9, Chapter 3, Historic District Regulations to add Section 9-311, authorizing the mayor to establish a fee for administrative costs related to the processing of certificate of appropriateness applications. Alderman Randolph?
I actually came in and discussed this with them earlier. Can you kind of just explain, what this is about? You guys explained it to me. And can you kind of just give me a guesstimate as to what this is costing? I know you said it's because Kristen has to come to the meetings and there's additional stuff. So how is this outside the scope of her normal requirements for her job?
It's not outside the scope of her job. When she's dealing with planning and zoning, there are fees that are paid for the administration of those permits. This is also a permit that they have to get in order to build in the historic district, but currently, the town foots the bill for it because we don't charge anything currently. So what we would like to do is to charge a fee that will recoup the amount of money that it costs us to administrate that. So when someone comes in and wants to file for a certificate of appropriateness, Kristen has to process their paperwork, gather their documents, communicate with the historic district, and then once that's done, she has to process the permit. So we are thinking that we're looking at maybe $50. We don't know that. That'll be set by the mayor for sure, and it'll be set by resolution. No, it's not set by resolution anymore, right? We would just have to post those. Those would be posted ahead of time on the website. So we aren't thinking that it's going to be more than $50 for a permit for a certificate of appropriateness, which you're looking at 3 hours of Kristen's time, 4 hours of Kristen's time for her to administrate that. We are not going to charge more than what it costs us. We're not looking to make money off of this. We just want to be able to recoup the amount of money it takes to administrate it.
Could you elaborate on that? Because she's being paid as an employee to be here. So I'm not sure where the additional cost comes from.
The additional cost is that what she is doing is she is actually administrating a permit that is a person's permit.
Which is in her
So,
job description,
just
correct?
like with a building permit, there are costs associated with that. And if the town is footing the bill for that, then the town loses money every time because there are other things that she can be doing for Public Works or for Planning and Zoning, that when she is administrating that or issuing permits. So it's not an uncommon practice. It's something that's done everywhere that issues permits. I don't think there's anywhere that they don't charge you to have a permit. Because it's called a certificate of appropriateness doesn't mean it's not a permit.
Alderman Contos, any comments?
I think it makes sense for us to charge a fee for the services that we provide. As somebody who, works at St. Tammany Parish, there are many things that we spend numerous hours more than what the fee that is supplied for that permit. And what I can tell you, as a person who could be doing other things, helping other people on the phone, helping other people that are quote-unquote free, I am not available to do that because I'm spending copious amounts of time working on permits that we are undercharging for. So the fact that we have zero fee for this, and it is a permit, tells us that we're not running our government municipal staff in a way that is efficient for the services we provide. So,
Well, that's where I'm going with this, because
Yeah.
is it more of a cost for the permit, or is it that we're understaffed and we don't have enough personnel to do all the things required of this office? Because the mayor has his responsibilities, Leanne has her responsibilities, Kristen has her responsibilities, Janet has her responsibilities, and then they get a phone call, but they need a permit. So they have to take away the time from their everyday responsibilities to go work on that permit.
But how do you get more staff? You have to have
More money.
funding. And how
Exactly.
do you get funding? Well, then you get paid for what you do. So this is charging an appropriate fee. They're not trying to gouge anybody or charge more than the hours it takes for her to distribute these, or administer it. But the other thing is sometimes, I think Ron and others can speak to the fact that, hey, maybe we charge $50, but on some permits, it costs her 300 man-hours to distribute the $50 fee, or the $50.
I'm not opposed to this fee. I support the fee 100%.
Yeah. I think it
I just want the
makes total
public to
sense.
understand
We just need
exactly
to make
why.
it-
Right.
We just need to make it a reasonable expense.
Right.
For
That's what I
the
was getting
service
at.
we're providing.
I
Yeah.
want them to understand why we're doing it. And how many certificates of appropriateness do we get asked for? So 4 or 5 a month?
Right.
This is not for a building permit, that's covered already. You
Right.
get a nice building permit fee for that office to take care of. This is someone that's over and above that in historic district, with their historic process. And Kristen spent a lot of time helping them get everything in
Right.
order. And this is no longer right on the back of a napkin, here's my house. Those days are gone.
Yeah.
And now it's online, anyone can see what we're doing before the meeting, and neighbors can come instead of showing up to the meeting to see what's going on.
Right.
It's so much better now. And she really works hard with the residents to help them through the process, make the PDFs if they need to. And that's what's involved. So to do nothing, and I've been advocating for this for years, is crazy, because that's time she's spending with a homeowner that's not a normal homeowner. A normal
Right.
homeowner is not historic, it just gets a permit. So, I got a sign replaced in Covington 3 years ago, $90 to take a fabric banner off and put a new fabric banner on the same pole. $90 for 3 months. Historic District Landmark Commissioner wants $150 or anything to start. And then every new meeting you pay another 50. Your truck is considerable.
Right.
So,
Right.
I'm not saying
Yeah.
we're New Orleans, but we are Covington.
Right.
Close to Covington, and they're doing 90, no matter what it is. So 50 is very reasonable. But our average building permit is what, $2,500? Yeah, so,
Yeah, thank you. And I'm becoming well aware of these permits, but
so
Yeah.
it's a little bit on top of that, only because of the extra work that Kristen's doing, which she would not have had to do.
Because, yeah.
And not to mention the fact that, she's not actually paid to come to the meeting, but she has to be here, so, all those permits are addressed. She's still doing her 40-hour week at work, and then, the month of planning and zoning and historic, those 2 meetings are every month. She comes and then has to check all those,
Right.
listen to the comments that the historic committee makes, take that down, make sure they're done, follow that up, If there's any changes that need to be made, it's Kristen's job then to follow to make sure that those are changed.
Is she an exempt or a non-exempt employee?
She's exempt,
Okay.
yeah.
All right, well, she's exempt, so it doesn't matter if it takes her 35 hours or 60 hours to do her job.
Well, yeah, that's,
Right.
right.
Exactly. She's salaried. That's why I'm asking if she's a non-exempt or exempt.
Right.
But the people that are actually recipients of service are the ones that are bearing the cost of that service.
Correct.
Rather than it coming from, a public works fund that might be generating a little extra revenue or a natural gas fund to go to pay their salary to work to provide a particular utility. So then you can utilize that money that would be coming from the other place, direct those funds with the purpose of those.
No, exactly. Or all taxpayers and, having to contribute to that versus just having a fee.
And the town has to compensate her. Her salary is based upon the fact that she has to attend all of these meetings and work these hours over and above her regular hours. And so having the town receive compensation for the fact that she's working these hours, it just recoups some of the money from the people who are getting the service.
Right. But if there are no other comments, I'd like to make a motion to move this forward favorably.
I'll second.
Second?
Yeah.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes moving forward. Number 3, thank you, Ron, for your time.
Thank you, Ron.
Number 3, consideration recommendation of a resolution to adopt the 2020 St. Tammany Parish Municipal Jurisdictional Hazard Mitigation Plan Update. Is there anyone in the audience that is familiar with what this is?
Let's ask Janet.
Shall I explain it?
Well, you can. It's extremely lengthy, but if you can sum it up in...
I'm not explaining the whole thing.
I want it summed up in 3 sentences.
Basically, what this is that all of the municipalities create a hazard mitigation plan. It's a plan for areas in town or issues in town that we should address that could become an issue if we were to have a disaster.
Hurricanes, natural disasters,
Right.
terrorism.
Based upon this plan, we submit what our plan is for things that we want. It might be bridges. It might be, one of the things was the creation of our EOC. And these items are updated periodically through the parish. The parish creates one plan that goes out that has all of our mitigation plans in there, and everyone adopts it. And then if there is a disaster, money is doled out based upon whether or not we have a plan and how much
Exactly.
of it we've carried out.
So my apology for those who are in attendance and those watching that may not be familiar with. Has this been posted to our website? Leanne? Was this posted, this description, on the website?
Hazard mitigation,
Yes.
they had, no.
Okay.
It will be before you vote on this as a,
Right.
town council.
All right, so I would like to make a motion to move this forward favorably.
Second.
All right, go ahead and vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes moving forward favorably. And I'd like to make a motion to close governmental.
I'll second that.
I'd like to make a motion to open infrastructure. Oh,
Oh, yeah,
I'm sorry, close the committee as a whole. Let's back up. Close the governmental committee as a whole,
Second.
and I'd like to make a motion to close governmental.
Second.
I'd
All
like
right,
to make a
before you
mo-
get started, though, I'll ask you to go ahead and chair the committee, but then also, if I could ask, I don't know, Yvette, would you mind stepping in for Pat? Thank you. All right, go ahead, Saucy. Or
Me to chair?
you can go ahead and chair.
At this time, I'd like
Y'all can fight
to make a motion to open the Infrastructure Committee.
Second?
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to accept the August minutes for the Infrastructure Committee.
Second?
Anything to discuss? No? At this time, I'd like to make a motion to close the Infrastructure Committee.
Second.
At this time, I'd like to make a motion to open the Economic Development Committee.
I'll second that.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the minutes from the August.
I'll second that.
There's nothing on the agenda. The only thing I would like to say is we have pushed the Fall Fest to March 13th. So that is the new date. Just hoping that everything gets back to normal, or at least close to normal, so that it'll be a better Fall Fest. So, does anybody have anything else they'd like to discuss in economic development?
No, but how's the sponsorship and everything showing for the Fall Fest?
It's
Well,
going
now
very
the Spring
well.
Fest?
We have about half of our sponsors ready to go. We have our lineup. We have vendors. So basically, it was ready to go. And now we're just pushing it to March 13th. So
Great, congratulations.
13th?
March 13th, yes.
You know, I mentioned Brian Gallo came in and he's going to start making music available at the farmer's market, possibly for maybe 10 to 12 weeks
Okay.
on Sundays, starting on September 20th.
Oh, wow, okay, great. That'd be a good draw.
Steve Anderson Band will be the first.
Yeah,
Nice.
Steve Anderson Band will be the first on the 20th, and then for 10 weeks, they'll have different bands. Either they might be bands that have played at the Opry, they might be buskers who would have come to Busker Fest, that will play at the farmer's market every week.
You gonna live stream it?
Oh, I guess we're going to try to live stream it from the park, so you'll be able to watch it online.
Well, I also want to say, just from an economic development interest, I like that people are moving around in town and trying to, you know, be part of our town again. And music is a big part of that. The farmers market is a big part of that. But I just want to remind people that we're still in phase 2. Please use your mask. Please social distance. If you want to see the music, apparently we're going to be live streaming it, so you don't necessarily have to go to enjoy some of that as well. Just please be mindful of the age of most of the people in our community, and do your best to be a responsible citizen.
And we are expanding the vendors who are going to be at the markets on those days, so there'll be more vendors. They're going to be spread out and spaced out. They're going to be required to have masks. We are urging everyone who comes to have a mask. If you're going to come to listen to the music, bring your chairs, but space out in your own pods with the people that you've been exposed to. Wear your masks when you walk around and get your food, and shop the vendors, and enjoy the music in a safe environment.
Very good.
Thanks.
Okay, anybody else? No? Okay. So at this time, I'd like to make a motion to close the Economic Development Committee.
I'll second that.
Okay, great. If there's nothing else, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll second
I'll
that.
second that.
I'll third it.
Okay.
Fourth it.
All right. Thank y'all, and thank you to the folks that were watching online. Have a good night. And for those in attendance as well. Thank you. I think Regan did.